So, hi, my name is Lynelle McKay. I am here today talking to Gracie about STEM leadership, especially putting women into the STEM leadership pipeline. I have a background in technology as well as nonprofit, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So, my first question for you is when did you initially become interested in electrical engineering and technology? And were you always interested in exploring these fields growing up, or did a particular experience kind of spark your interest?
I grew up not really that interested in engineering. I grew up interested in architecture. I would sit there and think about how houses were designed. What really got me interested in electrical engineering was when I was a junior, senior in high school. It was time to decide what I was going to pick as my choice in college, and my brother was an electrical engineer. So he's 7 years older. He was at Purdue University. So at a pretty, middle school and high school, as he was going through college, I kind of thought about electrical engineering, and I wasn't completely sold on it in the early years, but I thought as I got closer to going to college, I could see a lot of good that he was doing, and it seemed like a really interesting field. And so I thought, if my brother can do it, I can do it too.
That's awesome. So, I see that you've transitioned from working in technology to exercising your skills of leadership in nonprofit organizations. How has working in technology prepared you for working in nonprofits?
Working in technology and running businesses in the tech industry is prepare me to run any business. So what Motorola and then Freescale Semiconductors taught me was that I was focused on running a technology business. So I needed to ensure that my product lines were number one or number two in the market. And I really had to ensure I had sustainable, profitable business. Now, you want to do that and apply that to any industry, nonprofit or for profit. A lot of times people would say, Lynelle, why'd you go to nonprofit? I said, because I want to empower girls. And especially interesting was to make sure that there are girls interested in STEM careers. And that's what Girl Scouts was doing. So there was a great opportunity there. And I just applied everything I learned from technology and running businesses in technology and applied it to running the Girl Scouts as a nonprofit, or applied it to helping the boards that I was on, as I supported many nonprofits here in the Austin area. So for me, it didn't matter if it was for profit or nonprofit. You were basically just solving the engineering problem and running a business. And a lot of times people think of nonprofits very differently, but I was just in the business to empower girls versus in the business to build semiconductors for the cellular mobile market. For me, it's just about running a business and being true to that.
That's awesome. So, my next question is so, through serving as the CEO of Girl Scouts in Central Texas as an Asian American woman, you're forging the path for other Asian American women who might follow in your footsteps. What challenges have you faced as a woman of color in the workplace, and how did you overcome these challenges?
I didn't necessarily feel that much of an impact in the nonprofit space. Maybe because as a CEO for Girl Scouts of Central Texas, gender didn't really play a role. Gender definitely played a role in technology. I could definitely feel that. Ethnicity was actually second to gender. So growing up in the tech industry, I really felt marginalized as a woman and then marginalized as a woman of color. I mean, there are a lot of challenges there that you had to face. I didn't feel as much of it in the nonprofit space. But that being said, it really just put a focus on just making the right decision, treating people with respect, and like I said, running the business. And if you always put the business and the people first, then you make good decisions. And then eventually just focusing on performance. I remember going through the early days, rising up the ranks in the technology world. It was really focusing on performance. If I just did my job and did it well, then people would recognize that performance independent of the color of my skin or my gender. That being said, it was hard. A lot of times it was very, very hard in those days. But I just tried to focus on really not being the victim of it and just assuming that my performance is going to speak for itself.
Awesome. That's really interesting. So I love how a huge part of your focus in your career is empowering the next generation of women in STEM. What further steps would you like to take to keep this mission alive and to continue inspiring girls to explore STEM-related careers?
Well, helping you for one.
Mhm.
That was anything I can do to help women and girls to be exposed to a STEM career and college pathway is really important to me. And what I learned from technology is that you need women to have the grit and the perseverance because it gets hard, and we are still underrepresented in the ranks of STEM. And so I want to ensure that anything that I do can contribute to building a girl's confidence so that she has the perseverance and the grit to hang through some of those tough days. Because it's never going to be easy, right? You know that. But as long as she loves technology and loves doing what she's doing, then it's a perfect industry for a very successful career. But anything at all I can do, I'm trying to think about what do I do next? Do I get back to technology? Can I help more women and girls at that? Do I stay? I did the nonprofit for 8.5 years in Girl Scouts, where we really were committed to putting more girls into the STEM workforce talent pipeline. I'm just trying to figure out what can I do to make a difference, and anything like helping you to mentoring UT students or UT professors is something that I think I want to try to focus in on next.
Yeah, I love that. So growing up, was there someone you always looked up to who empowered you, and how did they shape you into who you are today?
Growing up as a Japanese American, so I'm a third generation Japanese American. Um, Obviously, my parents had a huge impact. Obviously, my mother did, and it was really tough because I grew up in a culture where you had to be nice and you didn't speak up or you didn't talk about the things that you've accomplished. It was a very tough thing to transition from growing up in that culture in Hawaii and then going to school, getting a double E degree, and then going to work at then Motorola, a big technology company. It was really challenging for me. So I think my mom and my parents gave me a lot of grounding to who I am, but it was some early mentors in the work in the workforce that really helped me. There were just two or three of them that along my career really believed in me more than I believed in myself, especially in the early days. So it was that confidence. I really didn't have, I second guessed myself a lot. And so it was some of those early mentors that really gave me that boost that I needed to believe that I could do anything.
That's great. I'm the same way. I second guess myself a lot. So in high school, what specific steps did you take to set yourself up for success in the future?
When I think back to what I think helped me, obviously I study hard and get good grades. But today, even more so than before, it's even harder. You all need such a long resume of all the different things you have to be doing, your AP classes, your extracurricular activities. I really think that it was having a part-time job and juggling the demands of school plus work, doing all those extracurricular activities, I think really made me much more well-rounded than it wasn't just a part-time job. It really taught me a lot on how to be able to handle what needed to be done when you went to college and then went into the workforce. So for me, that really seems to have shaped shaped me early on in my career. My first job was at Burger King, working the drive-through. I would get up at 5:15 with another two of my girlfriends, and we'd go down and be working in the drive-through of Burger King. And now I think back, and it's like that taught me a lot to be able to do that when I was still, a junior in high school.
Absolutely. My first food industry job, totally. It was so different, but it was really, really good lessons learned.
Mhm.
So you speak about being a transformational leader throughout your career and in your community. How do you define a transformational leader, and why is leadership an important skill to develop?
Gosh, leadership is everything. You learn really quickly the difference between being a manager and being a leader. And I learned really early on, one of my favorite quotes was about true leadership only exists if people follow when they have the freedom not to.
That's good.
And for me, I used to remember too, they won't, you hear this also, you don't remember what someone would have said, but you remember how someone made you feel.
Mhm.
And so I think about the difference between being a manager and being a leader. And transformational leadership to me means that the only thing for sure is there's always going to be change. And if a business doesn't continuously improve and change, then they don't compete, and then they eventually aren't there any longer. And so I think transformational leadership is the ability to handle this constant change to create a sustainable culture, a winning culture, winning business. And if you do the right things and make the hard decisions, make the tough decisions, but do it for the right reasons, then I truly believe you can make that transformational change. And that's what it was for us. It was, you can have a business, but are you truly a leader in that business? And if you do, are you making all the improvements, the continuous improvements you need to stay ahead of the competition? And that takes a lot. That takes a lot of grit.
Definitely. So looking back at yourself in high school, is there anything you wish you had known earlier or learned before?
Wow, that is a tough question. I would tell my high school me not to sweat the little things,
Mhm.
that things are going to be okay. And just remember to focus, have a vision on what you want, and stay focused along the way, and not to sweat the small stuff because it really doesn't matter.
Absolutely. It's great. And then, what has been one of your most challenging leadership experiences, and what did you learn throughout that experience?
There's a couple of things. One thing that really shaped who I am today was being a mom, and also being a technology executive at the same time. And so having my two boys, Connor and Ryan, who are now, in their 20s and adults, having that and managing my job at the same time really were defining events, because it taught you that you can't do everything, and you have to be able again to focus. And that really put into perspective what was truly important in your family and in your career, and that you really can't get bogged down with a lot of the little things that a lot of times people do. So having kids actually helped really frame who I was at work. I don't
Mhm.
know if that makes sense, but it really was impactful for me. And another thing that was really big in my early career, when I was when I first became a manager, I had my first P&L responsibility. We were an engineering group, and we had certain product lines, and we had the most unfortunate loss of our senior technology manager in a tragic accident. And he was hit by drunk drivers riding his bicycle. And just in an instant, we lost him. And as a new manager, I had to learn what I needed to do as a leader,
Mhm.
and for his family, for the team. So it really focused in on the support for the organization and for the team, and how we had to pull through that and carry on with the loss of our biggest technology manager of the business itself. So that taught me a lot about what I needed to do to lead a group through really tough times.
Yeah, that must sound really difficult. And so my last question for you is, what would you say to a young woman who can't really imagine themselves as a leader or working in technology industry because of the lack of representation?
I would tell that woman that she can be anything she puts her mind to be, and that she shouldn't let any misrepresentation in a current field she's interested in really stop her at all. When I was coming through the early days in technology, we were about maybe 10 to 15% women. In some cases, it's gotten better, which is good. And in other cases, it hasn't, because demand has increased so much as supply. So there are just so many, STEM related technology, especially engineering roles. Mm-hmm. And so I think if she can imagine herself being it, she just has to know that she can do anything she puts her mind to it. So that's why supporting your effort, or supporting any of the efforts to get women, or especially women of color, underrepresented women, into the technology or STEM fields is so important, because if I can do it, anyone can do it. And that's really important for them. They just have to don't listen to the negative talk. Don't let them marginalize you, because that's what people try to do, and you have to just rise above it. Don't be the victim, and don't let them marginalize you, and let your voice be heard. And if you put your mind to it, you can do anything.